Hey, good afternoon everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Beautiful day today. Out walking the trail out here, thinking about the old days and how things have changed. And that means when you're doing that, you know you're getting older, right? Yeah, I remember I used to sit around and talk with my grandparents, aunts and uncles, and they were all farmers, and they used to always talk about the old days. And when I was just a kid, you know, it always sounded very fascinating to me. And then the older I got, I saw the real wisdom in the way they lived. I mean, they lived off the land, they prepared their own food, they never wasted anything. Hard work, simple times, but they lived a good life. And then when I got to be about in my 20s, I guess, you know, they would be sitting around, and after a meal they'd say, wow, you know, it's not like it used to be. Things are really changing. And now that I'm in my mid-60s, I'm sitting around saying the same thing. And for just one example out of many that I could come up with, you know, when I grew up in Southern California as a kid, you know, not far from Disneyland, so very much a heavily populated area. And this is back in the 60s. We didn't lock our doors, just as one example of many that I could come up with, but I'll go with that one for a while because that's been on my mind a little bit. So yeah, we didn't lock our doors back then. Then we moved to Colorado, to a more rural area eventually. Again, didn't lock our homes up. Wasn't an issue. And when I eventually moved to the mountains, very rural, much more rural than where I live now, again, we didn't have to lock our cabins. We didn't have to look around for our car keys because we just left our keys in the vehicles. And no matter where we went in that area, that was just fine. No one stole cars. No one tried to. Yeah, those days are gone. They're really gone. I can remember walking up and down Main Street in a small mountain town there and looking in to all the cars as you walked up and down the boardwalk, and every single one of the cars and trucks had the keys in the ignition. And for the whole time I lived in the mountains, that's where my keys were. They were in the ignition, no matter where I went. Unless I went to the city, then of course you had to take them out and lock your car. But out in the rural areas, keys were always in the vehicles. And then fast forward to when I moved out here, you know, I can remember when the real estate lady that was showing me property out here, and this is pretty rural here as well, but one of the things that I noticed on all of the properties out here was they were all pretty much gated and locked. The gates were always closed and locked. And that struck me as quite a change from where I had come from, because unless we had livestock or something of that manner that we were trying to keep pinned up or something, we did not have gates. We did not lock our homes, let alone any gates to our property. And why is that? It's because we didn't have to. It wasn't an issue. Nobody ever came to rip us off. Just didn't happen. I mean, it just did not happen at all. So getting back to what the real estate lady told me was, you know, make sure you keep your gate closed and locked, because the thieves respect that. And I was like, wow, really? And when I first moved out here, and I was fixing my place up, it was a real fix-me-upper. And I spent a lot of time just here banging on nails and fixing the place up. And just so I could get a feel for the different environment that I was living in, I would leave my gate open sometimes while I was working. And sure enough, people would drive into my property when that gate was open. And they would say things like, oh, I'm looking for my lost dog. And you could tell that they were not looking for their lost dog. They were cruising into a property that was open. The gate was open. So I took that information, and now, nearly 20 years later, I keep my gate closed and locked like everybody else out here. And sure enough, the ones that don't end up losing some of their things on their property. People do cruise around and take things. And it didn't used to be that way, right? I mean, it just didn't. We never had to worry about those types of things. And now in the city, I know lots of people in the cities, and now they have cameras on their doorbells. You know, there's porch pirating is a real thing. You know, Amazon comes, drops their stuff off. You got to get out there pretty quick, right? And get it. Or the people that are just driving by looking for those easy pickings. So yeah, reminiscing about the way things used to be. And it doesn't feel like things are changing for the better. Still hopeful that it can, but yeah, so what's going on? How from just in my lifetime, from the 60s of living in a metropolitan area where we did not have to lock our doors or our cars or anything, and we did not get ripped off, you know? Yeah, and now, you know, we can't get away with that, right? I mean, there are some communities where you can still get away with that, but by and large, we all lock our homes. We take our car keys with us. Yeah, so what changed? Yeah, I talked with a lot of friends who are my age about this, and now we're doing the same thing that my grandparents used to do. Now, of course, the whole crime and thieving issue wasn't what my elders were talking about, because it did not happen when they grew up, and it was still largely not happening even towards the end of their lives. But that's all changed in my lifetime and yours, for those of you that are getting up there in some age as well, right? We all take these different precautions now to protect our stuff, protect our family. Yeah, so this society that we find ourselves in now is in a real flux. You can feel it, right? I know I can, and I'm way the heck out here where, I mean, no one's coming over my gate. But I have to have one. Yeah, it makes me sad to see how far we've come or how far we've gone. So, yeah, as much as I like working on solar stuff, and my hope is that always is helping to make things better. Let's get on some renewable energy. Let's not be so dependent on, you know, what we have become dependent upon. Let's take some initiative to be more self-reliant, take care of ourselves, treat the planet better. I mean, look around. I mean, what's better than nature? And nature's on the run. Yeah, lots of ideas. And I took that whole thing about the way we have to, like, is it fear? I mean, I don't feel fearful at all. But, I mean, I still lock up, right? And so does everybody else. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have forgot how to behave. Yeah, it didn't used to be that way. It did not. And that's just one thing I can think of. I can remember, you know, eating great meals with the grandparents and aunts and uncles and watching the way they prepare food and stuff, and listen to them talk and say, you know, real food doesn't come in a box or a can. And I could remember listening to that and being kind of amused. They were right. They were right. The elders were right. They were. And when you're really, really young, it might not sink in all the way. Then the older you get, you start to hear yourself saying a lot of the same things. Did not used to be this way. Things are changing. Not for the better. Not for the better in so many ways. Not for the better. Now, not in all ways, of course. I mean, there are good things going on out there, and there's definitely good people. But things are changing. Something's in the air. So we have to all stick together. And I'm pacing around, just shooting off the top of my head these ideas. I had this idea for an essay of sorts, and I get a little sidetracked and I stutter and get off topic a little bit. But you know, those are the things that I was thinking about. You know, a good friend of mine who I have showed you guys on this channel before. I was when we've been down in his neighborhood a couple of times talking about solar like we always do. And on their road, one of their neighbors was gone for a couple of days, had their place all locked up, gated up, of course, and someone came in there with a truck and a flatbed trailer and emptied that house of everything, wiped them out. So they came home to their big, beautiful retirement home, completely empty of everything they had filled it with. And all they had done was take a little vacation for a couple of days. I don't even know if they left the island. Maybe they just went to the other side of the island. I don't know all those details, but the whole neighborhood was up in arms about that. And it wasn't the first time something like that had happened. You leave your property, and in a rural part of the island, you know, you can't always see what's going on from the road, of course. But anyway, they got relieved of everything in their homes. Terrible thing to have to come home to. Everyone's upset about that. You hear about those types of things more and more. Very, very disappointed in how people behave. Anyway, yeah. The times have changed. If there were some youngsters around me, I could go on and say, well, it didn't used to be this way. And it did not. Anyway, that's my belly aching for the day. Still happy to be here. Would like to see things start to turn in the right direction. But the older I get, it just keeps looking more and more like we're circling the drain. Yeah. Anyway, I should end on something positive. Look how beautiful it is here today. Yeah, it's all good. But there's a few things to bitch about. Aloha, everybody. I'm glad I got that off my chest. Yeah, we're all in the same boat. That's for damn sure.